It started out like any other quiet morning. I was just about to step out and get on with my day when I walked into my garage, hit the button, and watched the door slowly lift open. Nothing unusual, just the normal routine. But the second that door went up, my peace was shattered. Out of nowhere, I heard shouting from across the street. At first, I thought maybe it was just neighbors arguing or someone calling out to a friend. But then I realized the voice was aimed directly at me, standing there. Hands on her hips was one of the most infamous characters in my neighborhood, the HOA Karen. If you've ever lived in a place with a strict homeowners association, you know exactly the type. She's the one who measures the height of grass with a ruler, sends emails about trash cans being left out too long, and stares from her window like a security camera. Only this time, she wasn't complaining about lawn, clippings, or mailboxes. She was screaming at me, claiming I had just stolen her brand new car. I froze, thinking she had to be joking, but the look on her face told me she was dead serious. Before I could even respond, she pulled out her phone and dialed 911, yelling into the receiver that she was witnessing a crime in progress. My heart started racing because I knew how quickly things could spiral out of control. There I was, just trying to open my own garage. And suddenly I was being accused of theft, with the police now on the way. Neighbors started peeking out there. Windows and the tension in the air was unreal. And in that moment, I realized this was only the beginning of the chaos about to unfold. As I stood there in shock, I kept asking myself how this could even make sense. The car in my garage was mine. I'd bought it months ago, registered it in my name, and parked it in the exact same spot every single day. But to her, none of that seemed to matter. HOA Karen was convinced she had caught me red-handed. She pointed at the car and shouted for everyone within earshot that I was driving off with her new vehicle. The way she spoke, you'd think I had actually broken into her property. It didn't take long before the neighbors started gathering outside. Some looked confused, others clearly entertained, and a few had their phones out recording. Living in a community like ours, everyone knew about Karen. She thrived on drama and somehow always found a way to make herself the center of it. But this time felt different. This wasn't about leaving recycling bins in the wrong place. This was her accusing me of a serious crime. The strangest part was her story. She swore up and down that her car had been delivered just yesterday, brand new from the dealership, and that I had somehow snuck it into my garage overnight. The problem? The make, model, and even the color didn't match what she claimed to have purchased. Yet she kept insisting, her voice growing louder and more frantic, as if shouting would make it true. Meanwhile, my mind raced about what would happen when the police arrived. How would I prove this car was mine before things got out of control? Paperwork was inside the house, but would they even let me go back in to get it? The longer she stood there yelling, the more uneasy I felt, knowing this confrontation was far from over. The air grew heavier with every minute that passed. I could see the flashing red light of a neighbor's camera phone trained directly on me, capturing the entire scene. Karen kept pacing back and forth on the sidewalk, one hand clutching her phone, the other pointing toward my garage like she was presenting evidence in court. She repeated the same lines over and over. "That's my car. He stole it. I saw him with my own eyes." Her voice cracked with this strange mix of anger and desperation, and I couldn't tell if she truly believed her own story or if she was just spiraling deeper into one of her neighborhood power trips. What made things worse was how quickly whispers started spreading among the crowd. A couple of neighbors who didn't know me all that well began asking each other if it could be true. Some looked at me suspiciously, as if maybe there really was more to the story. That's when I realized this wasn't just about me and Karen anymore. It was becoming a whole neighborhood spectacle, one that could easily damage my reputation if it went the wrong way. Part of me wanted to laugh at the absurdity of it all. But the thought of police showing up to investigate kept my chest tight. I knew how unpredictable those moments could get, especially with someone like Karen driving the narrative. She was the HOA president, after all. She had influence, and with her track record of filing complaints and calling city inspectors for the smallest issues, I couldn't shake the thought that she might try to use her position to push this even further. Every second felt like a countdown. I could hear faint sirens in the distance, growing louder, and I knew the real confrontation was only moments away. By the time the police cars rolled up the street, the tension had reached a breaking point. Karen didn't wait for them to get out of the vehicles. She practically ran up to the officers, waving her arms and pointing straight at me. "He stole my car," she shouted again, her voice carrying across the entire block. The officers looked between her and me, their expressions calm but wary, trying to make sense of the chaotic scene. My heart was pounding so hard I thought they might hear it. I tried to speak, to explain, but every word seemed to get lost in the swirl of accusations. Neighbors talking, and Karen's frantic interruptions. One officer asked for my identification, and I fumbled with my wallet, aware that any small hesitation might be used against me in this heated moment. Meanwhile, Karen leaned closer to the officers, insisting they needed to act immediately, painting some elaborate story about how she had seen me steal the car as it was being delivered. From the corner of my eye, I noticed a few neighbors whispering to each other, their faces a mix of curiosity and disbelief. Some were clearly on my side, shaking their heads at Karen's dramatic behavior, while others seemed unsure, caught in the confusion of what was real and what was just her theatrics. The tension was suffocating. Every second felt like it was stretching longer and longer, and the crowd's murmurs only made it worse. Then, as one officer began walking toward the car to inspect it, Karen's voice rose to a scream, her finger stabbing toward me like she was trying to physically drive the accusation home. I could feel my palms getting sweaty, my thoughts racing, trying to anticipate what she might do next. Would she escalate further? Would the officers take her side before I even had a chance to show proof? And in that moment, as the car's engine sat quietly in my garage, the entire neighborhood seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the inevitable explosion of chaos. Just as I thought the situation couldn't get any worse, something completely unexpected happened. One of the officers stepped closer to the garage and squinted at the car's license plate. "Wait a second," he muttered under his breath, reaching for his radio. My stomach sank. Instantly had something about my car triggered a new problem. Karen, sensing victory, practically danced on the sidewalk, waving her phone like a trophy, ready to announce that justice was about to be served. Then, out of nowhere, another neighbor emerged from the crowd holding up their phone. "Actually, I have video from last night," they said, their voice calm but firm. All eyes turned toward them. My pulse raced. Could this finally prove my side of the story, or would it just add more fuel to the fire? The video, they explained, showed my car being parked in the garage late the previous evening, proof that it had been mine all along. Karen's face went from triumphant to stunned in seconds. She opened her mouth to argue, but before she could even form a sentence, a third twist hit. The officer on the scene recognized something familiar about her story. He leaned in and quietly asked her for the dealership receipt. That's when Karen froze. She hesitated, scanning the crowd, and muttered something about having it somewhere at home. The tension ratcheted up even higher at that moment. Every neighbor's eyes were locked on us. The crowd that had been buzzing with curiosity turned into a silent jury, waiting to see what would happen next. Karen's voice, once so confident, wavered, but she didn't back down. She gestured wildly, insisting she had been wronged, while the officers exchanged glances, clearly The tension hit a breaking point as one of the officers finally stepped forward and asked Karen, "Can you show us any proof that this is your car?" she stammered, fumbled through her bag, and then froze. There was nothing. Her receipt, her paperwork, her evidence, all conveniently missing. The officer turned toward me and nodded, gesturing for me to come forward. My hands were shaking as I handed over my registration and insurance card. The documents were all in order, my name matching the car in the garage perfectly. Karen's eyes widened, but instead of calming down, she doubled down, trying to argue that there had been a mix-up, that maybe I had swapped the cars somehow. The officers exchanged glances, clearly unimpressed, and one finally said, "Ma'am, without proof, there's nothing here to investigate." Relief washed over me, but I stayed cautious. Karen was unpredictable, and I knew she could still escalate things if she wanted. As the crowd began to disperse, murmuring and shaking their heads, I thought the nightmare was finally over. But then came the final twist. From behind the garage, a car slowly rolled out, this one matching the exact description Karen had been yelling about the entire time. The real new car had been delivered to the wrong house next door, parked quietly in their driveway. Karen froze again, this time in total shock, realizing her accusations had been completely misplaced. The neighbors couldn't help laughing, and even the officers let out quiet chuckles at the absurdity of the situation. Karen's face turned red with embarrassment, and she muttered something about checking the delivery slip while I just stood there, stunned at how close things had come to spiraling out of control. My garage was safe, my car untouched, and my name cleared, but as I watched her storm off, I realized this wasn't just a story about a stolen car anymore. It was about how quickly fear and assumptions can escalate, and how even a quiet neighborhood can become a stage for chaos in the blink of an eye. After the chaos settled, the neighborhood slowly returned to its usual quiet rhythm. Neighbors who had gathered to watch began trickling back into their homes, some still whispering and shaking their heads, others laughing at the absurdity of what had just happened. I stayed near my garage for a few moments, making sure everything was in its rightful place, my heart still racing from the intensity of the morning dot. Karen, meanwhile, had vanished down the street, probably plotting her next HOA complaint or just trying to save face. The lesson was clear. Assumptions and snap judgments could turn a simple morning into a full-blown spectacle. I realized how easily fear and suspicion can spiral out of control when someone lets anger and ego override reason. My car was safe, but the tension had left a mark on the entire block. I spent the rest of the day talking with a few neighbors, explaining what had actually happened and sharing the videos and receipts that cleared everything up. People were relieved to see the truth, and I could tell that some had been reflecting on how quickly stories can be twisted when emotions run high. Even though it had been terrifying in the moment, the experience reminded me of the importance of staying calm, documenting everything, and not letting someone else's drama dictate your life. By evening, the street had quieted again, and my garage stood exactly as it had that morning, normal, peaceful, and mine. I leaned against my car and laughed quietly, thinking about how unbelievable the day had been. In the end, it wasn't just about a car, an HOA, or a single neighbor's obsession.